Cost of living and child poverty. Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here, and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your stein of coffee and let's think back years ago, back to the 80s, when a particular beer-swigging politician promised that no Australian child shall be living in poverty. And me, as a young, impressionable child, encouraged my father to vote for that man because we don't want other kids to be living in poverty. And he did. Still waiting for that to come about. It's only been 40 years, or probably 30 years. We'll get there eventually, I'm sure. I'm sure this time it'll work out. Maybe that's how my path becoming a cynical bastard started, right back there in the 80s. Thank you, Bob Hawke. But let's have a look at this article because it's discussing the cost of living crisis and fears child poverty will worsen as families make impossible decisions. And there's one example in here which I can't really relate to with the cost of things. So, Raylene Casalo is used to stretching a budget after raising 5 kids, but says making ends meet is much harder today. And, I mean, we've got a big family as well, so I can relate. Well, no, I've got a wife that's used to stretching a budget. At a time most would be thinking of retirement, the 57-year-old cleaner is doing it all over again. She is now raising 3 grandchildren in Toowoomba, west of Brisbane, and fighting hard to keep their dreams alive. Toowoomba is not that far. It's up the hill. It's bloody cold, but it's a beautiful city. Was it competing with Queensland to be the capital at one stage? Maybe it should have. It's getting hard. The rents are going up. Electricity's going up. Food's going up. Wages are just staying the same, she said. She said budgeting for the kids' needs was totally different today. When our kids were little, money value was more. The price of things weren't as dear as they are now, she said. Now, I wonder if that's a bit of a clouded perception. I'm just thinking back to when I was younger, how expensive things are. I guess from a child's perspective, I mean, toys have gotten a lot cheaper. Stationery items have gotten a lot cheaper. Computer and education access has gotten a lot cheaper. At least that's what I'm assuming when I look at how much I spend now to how much my parents spend. So we could go to our local shop and pick up a school uniform for like $5. Now, you could do that, remember? Kmart had like cheap uniforms, like $1, $2. It's all imported, and everyone was outraged. Now the uniforms are like $300 because they need a certain uniform. Now, can someone elaborate on this for me? Because we homeschool, we don't have this as a cost. We don't pay for uniforms. Rachel would love to spend that money on materials to sew and make clothing. And, I mean, we sent our eldest daughter for one term. We ended up getting a second-hand uniform. Did we? Or did we buy a new one? No, we bought a new one. I went to the uniform shop to buy stuff. But we sold it again because we didn't use it that much. But I can't remember it costing $300. Maybe it did, I just wasn't paying attention. I mean, shoes, yeah. Okay, shoes, there's $100 right there. You probably need another pair. I bet you the majority of that is shoes, wouldn't it be? And then you need, yeah, actually, I could see it hitting $300. And the kids don't wear it all the time. If you chuck the bag in, all of that stuff. School is expensive. I remember there was a Russian kid who immigrated over here, and he couldn't even afford the books. So, Ms. Xalo's observations are shared by most Australians, according to a long-running survey exclusively released to ABC News. 72% of Australians believe child poverty has worsened due to cost of living pressures. Yeah, they believe. That doesn't mean it actually has. This is a perception survey. Okay, according to the Smith Family's Community Attitude Survey, taken nationally by Essential Media. But that's not actually telling us if that's a perception. I guess that's important to a charity raising funds. The Smith family should tell us the amount of people rocking up there demanding or needing resources. That's an increase from 56% when the survey was taken at the height of the pandemic in December 2020, unless these are people admitting them themselves that they've slid into poverty or things are getting worse for them. The finding also shows 81% believe child poverty will get even worse in the next 12 months, says the Smith family's chief executive, Doug Taylor. I think it's incredibly significant, he said. Clearly, in the Australian consciousness, there's a great awareness of the challenges families are experiencing, and we absolutely see it on the ground for families who have to make impossible decisions about where to use their limited funds. The pathway out of poverty is getting more expensive. An estimated 750,000 children, 1 in 6 young people in Australia, are currently living in poverty, the Australian Council of Social Services estimates. More than 81% of those surveyed believe those children would not have what they need for school, with 75% fearing that will impact their future after school. Yeah, this is all about beliefs and perceptions. I want actual reality. And this is an estimate. Okay, so is this actually based on anything other than a survey result? How many people took the survey? Or maybe the question should be, are our expectations of what people need for school too high? I went to the first few years of my education in Victoria in primary school. We didn't have uniforms. It was only till I came to Queensland that you needed uniforms. Now, $300 for a uniform wasn't the idea of having uniforms so, the class differences between people weren't as apparent because people had more expensive shit they were wearing. I mean, boys don't care about that stuff. I guess people were talking all about Sweat Hog. That was it back in the day. That was the cool stuff. Sweat Hog and Nike shoes or Adidas shoes, something back. I'm trying to flash back to the 80s, guys. It's getting a bit rusty. I just remember Sweat Hog and Pat Cash. Pat Cash was really cool. Anyway, I was as cool then as I am now, so I'm not a good barometer. I'm sure there's like some retro channel we can all go to. According to a Future Investments Group, which runs an index on the cost of schooling in Australia, 28% of parents are very stressed or extremely stressed by paying for their child's education. It estimates hidden costs like textbooks, stationery, uniforms, laptops, and excursions now cost parents $85,000 over 13 years of public schooling. Okay, well, I'm not certainly spending all of that homeschooling. I mean, you don't need laptops, you got a desktop. Well, that's one thing. My daughter had a iPad. I mean, she did 1 term at school because she was misbehaving at homeschool, just to experience it. And what frustrated me was how much homework she came back with every day. And she had to sit there on the iPad doing mathematics. And I go, well, no, you want to do it on paper. You need to write it out. And the screen time they were getting was nuts. Primary school. I guess it's easier to mark. In 2021, the company, which issues education bonds and loans, estimated the cost at $74,000. Education for us is the pathway out of poverty and to building a good future. And so stability in a child's life really does matter, Mr. Taylor said. The cost of living pressures we're seeing today are playing out in enormously challenging ways for many young people. Ms. Casalo is optimistic about her grandchildren's future if they can navigate the cost of living crisis. 12-year-old Blake hopes to be a chef. Oh boy, mate. Don't get in that game. Don't become a chef. It's a tough gig. Ask people who are in the game. 7-year-old Dom just wants to be the best kid he can, and 6-year-old Millie is torn between being a dancer or a policewoman. When Blake starts high school this year, Miss Casello was only able to pay for the required 3 pairs of shoes and 2 school uniforms with the help of Smith family's Learning for Life program. Okay, I mean, 3 pairs of shoes. That's it. It's the shoes. So the Smith family's Learning for Life program. Okay, so this is a charity that you can donate to if you want to support this is probably a really good idea, honestly. Because, kids will do kids still tear the shit out of each other if you're not wearing the right shoes and that type of stuff? Is that still a thing? Probably, I'm definitely certain it is. Her husband, Michael, is also 57 and was diagnosed with dementia in the last fortnight. I work, but my husband's on the disability pension, so anything I earn over a certain amount gets taken off his pension. Her handwritten budget is full of crossed out notes. The worry and stress apparent in the scroll. If she gets any future emergencies like the $500 water bill that landed earlier this week, well, that's not an emergency. That's just a utility bill. She will have to sell treasured furniture from when her own kids were young. I wouldn't like to sell all my furniture and stuff because I've collected it over the years, and some of it's sentimental. We've got chests of drawers with names carved into them. One of my sons was into Winnie the Pooh when he was little, so I painted it for him. That would probably be one of the last things I would sell. So couch surfing and a digital divide. As cold weather and heating bills approach, the Smith family is about to launch its winter appeal, which it hopes will raise more than $6 million. Much of the money is earmarked for laptops and internet access, which 79% of Australians recognise in its survey are now vital for kids' educations. Wow, how times have changed. Laptops are so cheap nowadays, aren't they? And internet access is also really cheap. Digital access becomes one of those nice-to-haves, but we know that digital access is an essential for a great education. Yeah, no, I would agree. I would agree to that 100%. Honestly. The government is under pressure to raise welfare payments in this month's budget to help families through the worst of the crisis. The Australian Education Union, which represents almost 200,000 educators, called for greater funding to bridge the digital divide and address learning gaps from the pandemic in its budget submission. There are also calls for greater powers for renters and limits on landlords' rent increases. Until prices drop, the Smith family, like many others, is working to make sure kids' futures aren't sacrificed to survive the present. Well, didn't we throw a whole lot of kids' futures under the bus when we locked them all down for years? And aren't there, isn't there evidence now that some children are having speech issues, developmental delays due to all the mask wearing? We've got stories of families who struggle to find appropriate housing for their children, couch surfing, living in unsuitable accommodation like caravan parks, and of course, that has a big impact on a child's education. For now, Miss Casella's family is still getting by on her thrifty wisdom. She buys in bulk with family at a local farmer's market and grows food like avocados and chooks in her yard. It's a huge challenge at any stage of life, let alone 57. 57 isn't that old. She's not the first grandmother to have to raise her grandkids. She sounds like a tough cookie, this one. She knows exactly what keeps her going. The kids, we have to keep them safe. We have to keep them fed and clothed. They make us feel young. What's more concerning is her 57-year-old husband with Alzheimer's or dementia. Where is it? 57. Did I read that right? 57. Because that's nuts. You want to switch to you want to get into ketosis so you can so you can get your brain functioning again. That's what I'd do again, actually, if I realized what was happening. That was an option when my father was getting it. They're doing really well at the moment, so hopefully they'll continue to prosper and get everything they need, and we can get a good job with them. Do a good job with them. Yeah, so, it sounds like she's going to make the best of the situation, and she's been through it before. So let's have a bit of a talk about this. I think the Smith family have got a good strategy here, because 100% they're right. Internet access these days is a huge part of education. You can learn so much, and with schooling, it's a requirement. It's just the way it is. What do you reckon, guys? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on this one. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. Check out Heise BIM or Heise Does. And if you're a fan and enjoy the content I create here, you can support us on YouTube or Patreon, use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call us if you need an architect. Take care. Have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.